All right, it's Wednesday, May 20th. We are in the middle of the last week of teaching. Now, the class itself will conclude on Friday, May 29th, but the teachings will conclude on Friday, May 22nd. So let's do a little bit of review of what's expected for you between now and the end of the year. First of all, Quiz 23 is due today. You can submit it to me either through the packet that you are supposed to be bringing today or via email. I'll take either one. Minimum of 100 words, open notes, open book, open video, no working together, no plagiarism. Question, how did the Cold War end? So fairly broad question, and you can choose how you wish to answer that. Now, you already knew about that. I'd like to go on to the next things, the last two things of the year. First, Quiz 24, final quiz of the year. This is due Friday, May 29th. So on the final week of the year, there's not a Wednesday drop-off for the high school. This is just for the high school, but for the high school, there will be a Friday drop-off. So Friday, May 29th, Quiz 24 is due. Once again, minimum 100 words, either emailed or submitted in the packet that'll be delivered that day, along with your book, by the way. That Friday, May 29th, your history book needs to be returned in good condition. So it is open notes, open book, open video, no working together, no plagiarism. The question, how has the war on terror changed the world? Once again, a very broad question. You can specifically look at the United States. You can look at the war in Afghanistan. You could look at just any number of things. But the question is, how has the war on terror changed the world? That is Quiz 24, due Friday, March 29th. Test number 8 is also due Friday, May 29th. Excuse me, I'm going to keep confusing those. Now, keep in mind, the final week, there is no teaching videos. So because of that, I'm expecting you to devote your time to completing this quiz and the test. And if there's any makeup work that you've not done, any videos you've not watched, and any keywords that you've not submitted to me, well, you have that last week to do it. So make sure you use that time wisely. So on test number 8, Friday, May 29th, minimum 75 words per question. You may email it to me. You may submit it to me by the packet. It is open notes, open book, open video, no working together, no plagiarism. You have a choice concerning the homework. You may choose to do the homework. If you do the homework, that's chapters 22, 23, and 24. If you do the homework, then you only need to do 5 questions. Now, personally, I think it's a pretty solid idea because if you do the homework and you give it a good faith effort, that's an automatic 100%. If you need your grade raised, the homework is a fine way of doing it. So if you do the homework, you only need to answer 5 of the questions, your choice which 5. If you do not do the homework, you must answer all 10 questions. So it's just like the last test, but this is the final for the year. So chapters 22, 23, 24, do the homework and 5 questions, or do all 10 questions. So here are the 10 questions. Number 1, what were some of the causes of World War II? Number 2, why was Winston Churchill so important? Number 3, what was Blitzkrieg? Number 4, what happened at the Battle of Midway? Number 5, what was Operation Overlord? Number 6, how did World War II end? Number 7, what was the Cold War? Number 8, what was the Marshall Plan? Number 9, how did the Cold War end? Number 10, what was Operation Desert Storm? So these questions, obviously you can write them down. You can use any number of resources to answer them, but 75 words minimum. Make it useful, make it good. You're getting an entire week to complete it. This will be your last grade of the year, so I trust that you'll take this seriously and do well. Okay, I'd like you to right now write something down. I'd like you to write down the word finished and email it to me as soon as you see this video. So this is your attendance for the week, the word finished. So I will give you credit if you email me the word finished. Okay, let's get back to our lessons. The lessons this week will all be fairly brief, so we'll get right into it. So post-Cold War, the present. We talked a little bit about United States. We've talked about Great Britain and Germany. Let's move on to some other major nations. In 1981, Francois Mitterrand became the first socialist president of France. France has had a remarkably unstable government ever since the fall of the monarchy and the beheading of Louis XVI. There have been any number of republics, empires, dictatorships, just a vast variety. Post-World War II, France was primarily shaped by Charles de Gaulle, the leader of the Free French forces. He wielded surprising authority in France after the conclusion of World War II. His vision was France as a major world player, because, and that's not true, is the problem. His ego was greater than his abilities, not only on a personal level, but also on a national level. So it created any number of difficulties. So Mitterrand became president of France. He was the first socialist president. France has frequently toyed with socialism over the years. France has a much more relaxed work commitment than the United States and many other European nations, which is reflected in development and quality of life. Not all of the first world, the Western world, is the same. There are conveniences and capabilities that the United States has that nations like France do not. But there are choices. France has made a choice, maybe a national choice, to be a more laid-back nation. So they take significantly more time off, they work significantly less, and consequently, productivity is quite a bit less. But life cannot simply be measured in money earned and work accomplished. There's more to life than that. As a country, France still has aspirations of being a great power, which, as I've mentioned, creates complications because they are not. In 1995, Jacques Chirac took over. He dominated French politics for quite some time. France has played a leading role in the European Union, which was Chirac. His vision for France's restoration to power. He believed that as France could guide Europe, Europe could be the counterweight. Nationally, France has struggled with the effect of immigration upon its language and culture. Remember, for many years, France had connections with North Africa, primarily through colonization and domination. Well, those have had effects because now a lot of those immigrants have fled to France, and that has created a genuine problem that needs to be solved. Not that the immigrants themselves are the problem, but integrating them into French society has proven to be a difficult chore. Since the Cold War, no nation has increased in world standing as much as China has. In the 1990s, Chinese leaders made a decision to desocialize parts of the economy. Remember, under Mao Zedong and his immediate successors, we had the old idea of the 5-year plans, and they were given names like Great Leap Forward. Then later on, you had the Cultural Revolution. Well, so long as that happened, China continued to struggle economically. They were unable to really even satisfactorily feed all their people. So the Chinese leaders made a decision as the Soviet Union fell, as the United States asserted its position as the only superpower in the world. They decided to move away from socialism towards some capitalism. Now, they still maintain tight control. It's still a dictatorship. It's still, if you want to call it communist, you can. It's just not pure communism. It's communism in politics, but not in economics. Now, this doesn't mean it's freedom, but they have allowed some capitalism to happen because, as you can expect, capitalism has produced economic growth. The result was actually an explosion of economic growth, partly because China was so backward. It's easier to go from 0 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour than it is to go from 200 miles an hour to 205 miles an hour. And China was just starting, and so they did experience significant growth. A lot of the growth is fueled by speculation. There will eventually be a price to be paid for that, but a lot of it's fueled by just the hard work of the people. And they're looking to prosper like people all over the world do. And so that has produced a new China, a China that has surged economically. The population is still undergoing an unnatural change due to the one-child policy. A number of years back, China, trying to gain control of what it considered its expanding and uncontrolled growth in numbers, instituted one child, which means that parents could only have one child or else they would face economic sanctions or sometimes even kidnapping of the child. As you can imagine, that has led to a very unnatural skewing. And the skewing is there are too many men in China and not enough women. Many couples have chosen to abort baby girls because they do not carry on the family line, and they've chosen to keep trying until they can have a boy. Well, now we have a problem is that there's too many men. And historically, what happens when a nation has too many men? War and societal breakdown. This is not a good thing. But China has created some very strange conditions, and this can have long-term consequences for everyone. The Chinese military has changed significantly. They saw the results of the first Gulf War, and they saw the radical advancement of the United States in terms of technology, and they discovered, as the rest of the world did, that having lots of soldiers is no solution against the United States, because the United States can obliterate lots of soldiers with very few soldiers. So some of this investment in Chinese military buildup has been fueled by espionage and the foolishly lax policies of the United States. Ever since President Bill Clinton, the United States has turned a blind eye to China, as China has stolen state secrets, including Department of Defense and other important secrets. Some of that was pushed because President Bill Clinton was being supported by prominent members of maybe not the Chinese government, but certainly the Chinese economy. And so part of his massive, and I do mean massive, pile of corruption was the relationship that China formed within the United States, and it continues even to this day. In the last year, we've seen almost a half dozen university professors in the United States arrested for being secretly in the employ of China and giving off secrets that should have never been distributed. The government of China continues to oppress minority groups. The Uyghurs, which are Chinese Muslims, undergo death and the destruction of their culture constantly. This also includes Christians. Christians are facing even more persecution in the last year, largely as a result of the current General Secretary. His name is Xi Jinping. He is the most powerful Chinese leader in generations, probably since Mao Zedong himself. He is in the process of building a personality cult, much like Vladimir Putin of Russia. He wants the people to look to him for all things. He's trying to solidify power by essentially becoming a human god. This has weighed heavily on Chinese politics. He is a member of the princelings, and it has been interesting watching as he has navigated the dynamics. Now, someday when he fades, China is going to experience a real turmoil because he has made himself indispensable, and that is not normally a good thing. One of the nice features of the United States is that nobody is indispensable. Presidents come and presidents go. We've had 40 some odd of them, and undoubtedly you can probably not even name them all. That's a good thing. But China will eventually discover the problems that come from having a god as a leader. Through him, he has created a very centralized government in which all major decisions are made through Beijing, specifically his desires. And there's going to be, and has been, continued consequences. Even the coronavirus. China's response has been abysmal. It's important for you to know, basically all numbers and all information coming out of China should be doubted. Most of it is a lie. Some of it's just old-fashioned error, and a few things are honest, but most things that are honest are being distributed by people who are now imprisoned for speaking the truth. And part of this comes from the difficulty. If you look back at the Chernobyl disaster that happened in the Soviet Union, a centralized government responds poorly to these kinds of disasters because there are so many layers of decision making that there is nothing organic and responsive to it. And we're seeing that in China even today. China is aggressively seeking to become a second world superpower. Their military has expanded in both capacity and ability. It is yet to be tested in battle, so it's hard to say what it really can and cannot do, but it's best to assume the worst and that they are a powerful military. They're moving ahead with the strength of military expansion, economic might, and foreign investment. And in this, they are subtly assisted by Russia, and we'll deal with the events of Russia since the fall of the Cold War, or the end of the Cold War, in the days ahead.